There is a proven structure of long-term wealth that has been passed down through historical Hebraic tradition for thousands of years. It is a precise strategy constructed upon the strategic and practical significance of the number 7. Once you truly grasp the actual logic of this framework, you will finally understand why specific dynastic lineages manage to build lasting wealth while the masses exhaust themselves for a failing wage. Modern financial institutions are fully and acutely aware of these recurring market cycles. Global analysts have dissected these precise patterns for decades, yet they remain mostly hidden from public discourse. No one explains these vital economic truths to the average hardworking citizen. Today, I am breaking that long-standing silence because the insights I am about to unveil are far too important to remain ignored and misunderstood. Let us engage in a moment of direct and uncomfortable honesty. Have you ever scrutinized your financial statements at the end of a grueling month and felt a sharp sense of bewilderment regarding your missing capital? You definitely invested the effort. You arrived at the office long before the first rays of sunrise. You traded away precious and finite moments with your children, sacrificed your own physical health, and ignored your constant need for recovery. And yet, the cold arithmetic simply refuses to yield a stable or sustainable result. There is always a heavy surplus of obligations and a painful deficit of resources. Perhaps you have experimented with unnecessarily complex spreadsheets. Perhaps you have consumed every hyped-up bestseller on frugality. Perhaps you have implemented the stiff strategies of the most famous financial commentators on the news. Nevertheless, a persistent and heavy sensation remains, a feeling that there is a structural leak in your economic bucket that you cannot locate regardless of your constant efforts. If this narrative mirrors your daily reality, please understand this simple and liberating truth. This failure is not a direct reflection of your personal character. You were simply never provided with the correct professional manual. You were denied the governing regulations that actually dictate how capital is attracted, how it is retained, and how it is rapidly amplified. The mirage of constant effort. I have witnessed this tiring cycle of frustration entrap countless virtuous, exceptionally industrious individuals. I recall a woman from my past named Alina who embodied this struggle. She sustained a relentless and heavy schedule of 2 full-time roles for nearly 2 decades. She served as a dedicated surgical assistant by day and performed demanding industrial cleaning services 3 nights a week. Alina was the absolute antithesis of laziness or entitlement. Alina was never reckless or impulsive with her expenditures, but every single time she managed to accumulate a small financial cushion, a systemic failure would inevitably occur. The engine of her aging vehicle would seize. An unforeseen and costly dental emergency would arise. The physical integrity of her home would suddenly falter. It appeared as though her hard-earned capital was actively escaping her very presence. Meanwhile, she would observe other prosperous families in her social circle, people who did not seem to exert themselves with any more intensity than she did. Yet they were acquiring quality real estate, providing top-tier educations for their offspring, traveling the entire globe, and launching successful ventures. What specific private data did they possess that she was sadly missing? This is the inquiry that the majority of people never dare to openly and clearly articulate. Or if they do ask, they are met with weak and superficial platitudes. Observers will claim it is a matter of unfair nepotism, or random blind fortune, or that certain demographics possess an inherent social head start. But that is a fragmented and empty perspective. The profound reality is that there are ancient protocols regarding fiscal movement, market cycles, and the natural momentum of wealth that have been guarded within Jewish heritage for over 30 consecutive centuries. These practical tenets are not mystical abstractions designed for the few. They are not faded artifacts of old folklore. They represent empirical, battle-tested wisdom that has outlasted the total collapse of empires, the bitterness of exile, and the extreme shifts of global markets. At the core of this methodology lies what I define as the 777 Protocol. It is firmly anchored in the wisdom of the Torah. It is validated by the sharp analytical logic of the Talmud. And once you internalize its practical essence, your perception of value will be permanently and deeply altered. Today, I will navigate you through each key component of this protocol, reveal its real-world origins, and demonstrate precisely how to integrate it into your current economic reality. We will begin this major transition this week, not in some distant future, but starting immediately. The first 7, the mastery of the strategic pause. The initial 7 concerns the fundamental rhythm of intense exertion and purposeful rest. I must share a specific and clear memory to illustrate why this is the cornerstone of the entire system. My grandmother, may her soul be at peace, reached these shores with virtually nothing to her name. She and my grandfather disembarked with 2 worn suitcases and a tiny cache of coins hidden deeply within the lining of her heavy coat. They lacked any linguistic fluency in English. They lacked formal academic credentials. They lacked institutional support or wealthy business mentors. Yet, within a single decade, they were the proprietors of a flourishing local business. Within 20 years, they had acquired the very actual soil the building stood upon. And when her journey concluded, she left a financial legacy significant enough to fund the dreams of every one of her grateful descendants. During my youth, perhaps around the age of 13, I innocently questioned her method. How did she create such overflowing abundance from a total void? She provided a response that bypassed my understanding then, but it has become the guiding North Star of my career. She whispered, "The secret to the harvest is not found in the intensity of the planting. The secret is found in the moment you put down the shovel." I assumed she was being artistic and metaphorical. She was being strictly and strategically literal. In the Torah, within the book of Exodus, chapter 20, verse 9, it is written, 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the 7th day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. Most people interpret this as a purely theological directive regarding standard communal worship. But my grandmother perceived a tangible, structural financial law. She recognized that the ancient mandate to cease activity on the 7th day is a vital fiscal safeguard. The secret to the harvest is not found in the intensity of the planting. The secret is found in the moment you put down the shovel. Here is the strategic and undeniable reality. When you operate at maximum capacity 7 days a week without any intermission, you induce a state of severe mental decline. You lose your essential broad vision. You begin to authorize desperate and dangerous compromises because your mental system is completely depleted. You acquire unnecessary items as a form of emotional relief to mask your deep exhaustion. You cannot detect high-level opportunities because your executive function is clouded by constant, heavy fatigue. Talmud, specifically in the Tractate of Beitza, suggests that a person's total provision for the year is determined ahead of time, with one significant and powerful exception. The resources expended to honor the cycle of rest are allocated through a special, additional economic channel. Consider the huge implications of that teaching. The capital you dedicate to stepping away from the grind is not a subtraction from your total net worth. It is a unique, separate, and protected deposit. It is a smart dividend for the mind. My grandmother treated the Sabbath with the same unwavering rigor a CEO treats a quarterly report. Every Friday at sundown, she completely halted the machinery of commerce. Her competitors in the neighboring shops remained constantly open. They falsely mocked her. They calculated the potential sales she was supposedly forfeiting. But here is the historical and undeniable result. Because she allowed her mind to fully reset, she operated with total precision during the 6 days of active work. She possessed the clarity to know exactly which inventory would move, what pricing strategies would win, and when the market was ready for smart expansion. She observed the subtle shifts in consumer behavior that her competitors missed because they were blinded by the fog of endless, aimless labor. The first 7 is this: operationalize the 6 and 1 strategic cycle. 6 days of relentless, high focus and aggressive execution. 1 day of absolute, non-negotiable and deep cessation. Not a day of mindless and slow lethargy, but a day of strategic reflection. A day where you detach, audit your current trajectory, and realign your mind with your long-term and important mission. If you are currently grinding through a deadly 7-day week, you are not accelerating toward wealth. You are drifting into a certain and painful crash. You are burning your engine without a proper map. Start this very week without delay. Identify one 24-hour block where the work stops and the higher thinking begins. This single habit has rescued more families from impending failure than any brokerage account in history. The second 7, the strategic release. The second 7 is even more profound, and it remains grounded in cycles that impact the global economy. This is the principle of the sabbatical meta cycle. History shows us that every 7 to 10 years, the global economy faces a major correction, such as the 1987 Black Monday, the 2001 tech bubble, and the 2008 financial crisis. In the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 15, the Torah introduces a concept that sounds entirely revolutionary to the modern ear. At the end of every 7 years, you shall grant a release. Every creditor shall release what he has lent to his neighbor. Every 7th year, the financial ledger was entirely reset. Liabilities were legally dissolved. The economic slate was completely wiped clean. Now, understand that the modern banking industry is highly cautious of this principle. Their entire profit model relies on the exact opposite: permanent, heavy, and compounding debt. They want you tethered to a digital ledger for 30 years. They want you to accept the minimum payment as a normal and expected part of human existence. But in the Hebraic worldview, debt was never intended to be a permanent life sentence. It was intended to be a temporary, cyclical, and useful tool. There was a man in our circle, let's call him Michael, who shared his strong testimony at our center years ago. Michael had been a titan in high-stakes property development. He had the assets, the prestige, and the massive cash flow until the structural collapse of the credit markets. By the year 2008, Michael was literally struggling under $2 million of high-interest debt. He was losing his daily health and his close family. He recounted sitting in his office parking lot, unable to touch the door handle because the weight of his obligations had entirely paralyzed him. That evening, he sought counsel from a wise mentor who told him something utterly unexpected. The mentor said, "Michael, you are currently in your personal meta season. This is not a catastrophe. It is a full liberation." The teacher explained that the meta principle is a mandate to audit your life and intentionally release what is no longer serving your growth or financial future. This includes the dead deals that are siphoning your limited energy. It includes the investments you are clinging to purely out of an ego-driven refusal to admit short-term failure. It includes the bad business alliances that cost more in peace of mind than they provide in actual profit. It includes the financial barnacles, the recurring fees, the unused subscriptions, and the outdated obligations that have attached themselves to your ship, dragging you down without your daily awareness. Michael went home and performed a radical and honest audit. He scrutinized every single dollar that left his business account. Asked one clarifying question for every line item: knowing what I know now, would I sign this contract again today? If the answer was no, he immediately initiated a release. He liquidated underperforming assets, even at a significant loss, to stop the bleeding. He severed draining and parasitic partnerships. He eliminated every automatic charge that didn't contribute to his true primary mission. It took him a year and a half to navigate the difficult transition. But at the end of that tunnel, Michael was completely debt-free. His gross revenue had decreased, but his actual retention was higher than it had been in a full decade. For the first time in years, he was the true owner of his own time. Within half a decade, his portfolio had surpassed its previous peak, this time, built on a foundation of solid capital rather than shifting borrowed sand. The Talmud discusses how the great scholar Hillel created the prospal, a legal mechanism to ensure that the meta did not stop the flow of honest and fair commerce, showing that this wasn't about being irresponsible. It was about being deeply intentional. Here is your task for the second 7 in this protocol. This week, I want you to create a comprehensive list of every single financial commitment you have. Every loan, every recurring digital payment, every pending contract. Apply Michael's question to each and every one. Be strict with your red pen and your logic. The things you are holding onto out of fear of wasted money are the very things preventing your next big surge of prosperity. In the Ethics of the Fathers Pirkei Avot, Ben Zoma asks, who is truly wealthy? His answer, the one who is honestly satisfied with his portion. But the deeper meaning is this. You cannot find satisfaction in your portion if you are too busy servicing a portion that belongs to your demanding creditors. The Meta audit provides the clarity necessary for achieving true wealth. The third 7, the flow of the Tzinner. Now, pay close attention, because this final component is the catalyst that truly activates the previous 2. The third 7 concerns what we call maxer, the tithe, but viewed through a lens that would surprise most modern financial advisors. It originates from a pattern hidden in the narrative of the famous patriarch Jacob. In Genesis 28, Jacob makes a solemn vow after his deep vision of a ladder connecting earth to the divine heavens. He declares, "Of all that you give me, I will surely give a tenth to you." Most are familiar with the universal 10% rule. It is a staple of many different cultures, but almost no one examines the critical timing of Jacob's commitment. He made this vow at the moment of his greatest personal vulnerability. He was a fugitive from his angry brother Esau. He was completely homeless. He was utterly without funds. He was literally using a cold stone as a pillow in the wilderness. He possessed 0 tangible assets. And in that vacuum of nothing, he pledged to distribute 10% of his future and unseen increase. This is the third 7 of our protocol. It links to the number 7 because of the poor tithe, Maxer Ani, distributed during the critical 7th year of the Meta cycle. The Zohar, the ancient text of Jewish thought, teaches a startling concept about this specific act. It suggests that the gesture of giving creates a Tzinner, a systemic pipeline. This pipeline is not a one-way street of loss. By initiating the flow of capital outward, you create a vacuum that pulls the flow of success directly inward. But here is the detail the banks will never voluntarily mention. It is not about giving what is left over at the end. It is about giving intentionally and first, before the mortgage is even paid, before the utility companies are fully satisfied, before the grocery bill is finally settled. The primary portion belongs to the act of tzedakah. While we translate this as charity, the root word is tzedek, meaning social justice. In this worldview, giving is not an act of optional generosity. It is an act of restoring the correct order of the entire system. I remember a woman named Hannah in my old and quiet neighborhood. She was a widow who lived on a very modest and fixed income. Most people in the community worried about her daily ability to survive. But Hannah did something that baffled the logic of the secular world. Every single time she received her check, she set aside her primary tzedakah, without any fail, even when her heating bills were excessively high, even when the cost of food unexpectedly rose. Well-meaning friends would say, "Hannah, you are in a state of obvious lack. You must keep every penny for yourself." She would respond with a smile that contained more wealth than a bank vault. "I cannot afford to close the natural pipeline. When I give, I am declaring my trust in the source of all things, and that source has never failed to provide." Hannah lived to be nearly a century old in peace. She was never without a comfortable home. She was never once hungry. And upon her passing, it was discovered that her modest savings had quietly compounded into a significant sum because she lived with the confidence of a leader, making wise choices from a place of security rather than a place of desperate panic. The Talmud in Tractate Tanakh contains a profound play on words. Aser bishvil shitithasher, tithe so that you will ultimately become rich. The sages were not speaking in vague metaphors. They were identifying a mechanical law of the spiritual and financial universe. Here is your directive for the third 7 in our system. From your very next income event, set aside exactly 7%. Why 7 instead of the traditional 10th? Because this 7% serves as the growth seed, a specific frequency alignment designed to align yourself with the 777 protocol. Do this immediately before you touch a single dollar for your own needs. I realize this feels deeply counterlogical. I know your internal calculator is screaming that the basic math doesn't work, but remember Jacob on his hard stone pillow. He began his pipeline when he had absolutely nothing, and he became one of the most successful figures in the ancient world. Dedicate 7% to a cause that genuinely repairs the broken world. Watch the doors that begin to open over the next 7 pivotal months. You will witness positive events that defy every statistical probability, integrating the rhythm. When you weave these 3 sevens together, the true power of the 777 protocol is fully unleashed. The first 7 clears your vision through strategic rest. The second 7 cleanses your life through ruthless release. The third 7 connects your life to the infinite potential through fearless giving. This is the rhythm of the productive world itself in action. Creation required 6 days of action and a 7th of total stillness. The land required 6 years of fruitfulness and a 7th of full recovery. Your wealth requires the same essential breath. It needs fresh oxygen. It needs continuous circulation. Wealth that is gripped with fearful white-knuckled tension eventually and surely suffocates. Wealth that is managed with precision, released with wisdom, and circulated with courage grows in a way that bypasses conventional and flawed economic theory. The Ethics of the Fathers teaches that there are 4 distinct characters of man. The average man says, "What is mine, and what is yours is yours." But the elevated man says, "What is mine is yours, and what is yours is yours." The 777 protocol is your training manual to move from the standard to the truly effective, not through self-deprivation, but through self and fiscal mastery. I have observed families in my community apply these laws for multiple generations, and I can confirm that those who rest, those who audit and release, and those who prioritize giving are the ones who consistently thrive during the economic storms. They don't just survive, they notably prosper. Their marriages are more resilient and loving. Their bodies are more vibrant and vital. Their children inherit a legacy of wisdom that no inheritance tax can ever touch. This is the true definition of generational wealth. It is the transmission of a high-level frequency. Today, you have been tuned to that ancient frequency. Your era of frantic struggle is finally ending. The leaks are permanently being sealed. But this transformation requires you to deviate from the uninformed herd. It requires you to adopt the productive rhythm of 7, your first step. If this message resonated with the truth already dwelling inside you, I want you to perform a simple act of commitment. Think about the core lessons here and commit to the process. Write in the comments how you plan to implement this strategy. By articulating this, you are transitioning the idea from the digital space into your concrete physical reality. It is a binding pact with your future self. Your second step, identify one person in your sphere who is currently drowning in the grind, someone who is working with integrity but seeing no tangible results. Share this blueprint with them today. You might be the essential catalyst that breaks their cycle of scarcity. There is a Hebrew blessing, Baruch Atah Adonai, Magen Avraham, blessed are you, shield of Abraham. The same force that shielded the patriarchs and prospered the faithful throughout history is aware of your sincere efforts right now. Trust the proven rhythm. Implement the needed pause. Execute the bold release. Activate the healing gift. And watch the architecture of your life rebuild itself before your eyes.